Hey guys, welcome to the first algebra lesson, and the prerequisite for starting to learn algebra is pretty simple. Basically, you need to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So I'm just gonna write down some prerequisite questions. Prerequisite questions. Knowledge. Probably a better word. So if you guys can do these questions, then it's safe for you to start learning algebra. Okay, so if you can do something like 3 plus 5. Okay, so 15 minus 10. Question 3, bit of times, so 6 times 15. You can even use a calculator if you wish, I don't really mind. 20 divided by 4. So basically you need to know how to add, minus, times, and divide to carry on with the rest of the lesson. It will be helpful if you know some fractions as well. So if you know how to do something like this, 1 over 3 plus 2 over 4, that would help out a lot if you know how to do that. If you don't need to find out immediately, but sooner or later you have to learn some fractions. So I would suggest that you look that up. So I'll give you about a couple of minutes to do this, and then come back to the video and continue with the rest of the lesson. Okay, so now that you've had time to do them, let's check your answers. 3 plus 5 is 8. 15 minus 10 is 5. 6 times 15, slightly harder. If you had to use the calculator, I don't mind. It's 90. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And 1 over 3 plus 2 over 4. So you have to make sure that the denominators are the same. So then this becomes 3 by 4. And 1 by 4 on the top, plus 2 by 3 and 4 by 3 on the bottom. Okay, so now both fractions have the same denominator. 2 by 3 is 6, 4 times 3 is 12. So that equals 10 over 12. Which then simplifies down to 5 over 6. So you probably need to do a tutorial on fractions if you're unfamiliar with that one. Okay, so now that we've defined the prerequisite knowledge, let's start the lesson by talking about the order of operations. Order of operations. Okay, what are the order of operations? Now, if I write down a really long expression, for example, 2 by 3 minus 4 plus 2 divided by 2, and then let's put in a bracket, 3 minus 1, let's put that in the bracket. Let's even put a power in there, squared. Okay, so you need to know which ones to do first. And you don't actually just go from left to right. There's actually a particular order that you have to follow, and that order is: number one, you need to do brackets and exponents, which are the powers. So that number there is the exponent. Number two is multiplication and division. And number three is addition and subtraction. Okay, so basically you have to look for number one in the whole equation. Are there any brackets? Are there any exponents? And you're going to complete them first. And then you look through the equation, look for any multiplication and division and do them. And then you're going to look for addition and subtraction and do them. Now, if you have multiplication and division next to each other, then you simply work from left to right. And same thing with addition or subtraction. If they're right next to each other, then you work from left to right. So let's just conduct this process on this long equation here. So step number one, brackets and exponents. Well, I can see a bracket here and an exponent there, so I'm going to do that first. So this part is what we're going to do first. So let me select a different color. So this part is what we're going to do first. Copy down everything else. 2 by 3 minus 4 plus 2 divided by 2 plus. Now 3 minus 1 is 2. So we've done the brackets. 2 to the power of 2. 2 to the power of 2 is the same thing as 2 times 2. Okay, in fact, I'll give you a couple more examples. If you have something like 3 to the power of 2, that means 3 by 3. 4 to the power of 2 means 4 by 4. And if you have something like 5 to the power of 3, that means 5 times 5 times 5. So basically, it means how many times you're going to multiply by itself, by the number itself. Okay, so now 2 by 2 is 4, so we know that already. So we're just going to cross that out and change it to 4. Okay, so now we've done number 1, we can cross that off. And now we're going to look for multiplication and division. Now we have 2 by 3, which is 6, so we're going to do that first. Right, we got 2 by 3, which is 6. We got 2 divided by 2, we're going to do that. So 2 by 3 is 6 minus 4 plus 2 divided by 2 is 1 plus 4. Okay, now we've done multiplication and division. We can do addition and subtraction. And notice how we have minus, plus, and plus. Now we're going to work from left to right. So 6 minus 4 is 2. Plus 1 plus 4, so that becomes 3 plus 4, and that becomes 7. Okay, so the answer from this answer to this whole expression is 7. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the order of operations, you probably need a few more practice questions. So I'm going to put up some more practice questions for you to do. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to do these. Come back when you have done them and we'll go through the answers. Okay, so the first one we have 6 squared is 36 plus 3 plus 4 squared is 16. So 36 plus 3 plus 16, as I said, I don't mind you guys using the calculator, and the answer is 55. The second one, 17 times 3, so because times and divide, they belong to the same level, we're gonna just work from left to right. So 17 times 3 is 51, divided by 2 is 25.5. Okay, 4 times 5 plus 2, we have brackets here, we're gonna do first, so 4 times 7 is 28. Now we have brackets 5 minus 4, so that becomes a 1 inside the bracket. 1 squared plus 3 times 2. So 1 times 1 is just 1 plus 3 times 2. Now here's a tricky part. We have 3 times 2, which we have to do first. So 1 plus 6 is 7. Okay, now we have the fifth one. Now this one's slightly more complicated. We have a times there. We have times, divide. Now these two are next to each other. So what that means is we're going to work from left to right. So we're going to go -8 times 0, which is 4 minus 0. Right, because -8 times 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. Divided by 4 minus 3. Okay, so we have a divide. 0 divided by 4 is obviously 0. So 4 minus 0 minus 3. 4 minus 0 is 4, minus 3 is 1. Okay, so I hope you guys have a good handle on that, and now we can start learning some algebra. Okay, so the first step in algebra, we're gonna go back to normal addition. Okay, so let's do 10 plus 5 equals 15. Okay, let's say someone did a trick question and said, if the 5 was missing, okay, if the 5 was missing, what would you do to find out what this number is? Alright, what would you do to find out what this number is? Okay, and just by looking at it, you can probably tell that the box is 5. Right, because 10 plus 5 equals 15. So that's one way of doing it, just by guessing and checking. So if I told you 22 plus a box is 27, you can probably tell me that the box is 5 again. Alright, and let's do another one. 33 plus, let's do a triangle now, is 34. So the triangle must equal 1. Alright, and if I told you 50 minus a box, let's not do a box, let's do a funny flower shape. equals 20. Alright, so you can probably tell me that the flower shape is 30. Okay, so that is simply replacing an unknown number with a symbol. Now, these symbols are a bit random, alright, because, or you might find that, you know, they're a bit hard to draw and a bit random. And in maths, we like to be consistent. So the first symbol that we're going to use, instead of boxes or triangles or flowers, is X. Okay, so we're just going to replace these questions with X. So find X. Okay, so question 1, 2 plus X equals 5. Now notice how the way that I write X is like two brackets next to each other. Okay, so instead of writing X, some people write it like this. Okay, make sure you don't write X's like a time symbol, because people get that confused pretty easily. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to do these and then come back when you're done. Okay, so now that you have figured it out, let's have a look at the answers. 2 plus a number is 5, so that number must be 3. 30 minus a number is 27, number must be 3 again. 50 plus a number is 55, so that number must be 5. 30 times a number is 60, that number must be 2. 50 divided by number is 25, that number must be 2. Okay, so you probably didn't even need to think to do these questions, right? Well, this is what algebra is mostly, is just figuring out what the container X represents. So in these questions you figure out what X is, and a lot of algebra questions in junior high school is just figuring out what X equals. So it's not very hard. Okay, so what if we get presented with a more difficult problem? So what we want to do now is help you understand some ways of manipulating numbers in an expression. So if we have something like, let's say 30 plus 3 equals 33. Now you can actually rewrite this expression by moving the plus 3 onto the right hand side, and you'll notice that if you move a term to the other side of the equal sign, the operation in front of the term becomes its inverse operation. So what that means is we now write this equation as 30 equals 33 minus 3. Okay, and you can see that it still equals each other. The left hand side still equals the right hand side. So this equation is valid. So here we have two valid equations. Okay, so I just want you to practice that on this equation here. Let's do 5 minus 2 equals 3. Okay, so we can move the minus 2 to the other side, which becomes 5 equals 3 plus 2. And both of these equations are valid. Now the same thing works with numbers that don't have a sign. So in this equation, for example, 5 minus 2 equals 3. The number in front of 5, because it's a positive 5, right? If we move the 5 to the other side, it becomes negative 2 equals 3 minus 5. Okay, and these equations are both valid. If you are uncomfortable with negative numbers, you probably need to do a tutorial on that as well. I'll probably make one like that soon. So we can also move the term on the right hand side to the left hand side. So in this equation, if we have 5 minus 2 equals 3, and obviously the 3 is a positive 3. If we move the 3 to the left hand side, then it becomes 5 minus 2 minus 3 equals, and because we have nothing left on the right hand side, 0. Okay, so again, both of these are valid equations. So this is just showing you that you're allowed to move things around in algebra. Okay, so now we're going to do a couple of these. So actually I will just clear the screen. So the question is, make the circled term the subject of the equation. Now the subject of the equation, I'll do the first one so you know what I mean. Okay, so we have 3 plus 2 equals 5. And let's say I circle the 2. Okay, so what I would want you to do in the answer is to make 2 the only thing on the left hand side of the equation. So 2 equals 5 minus 3. Okay, so this is the answer. Okay, 2 equals 5 minus 3. So you have just made the number 2 the subject because it is the only thing on that side of the equation. Okay, so let's do 10 plus 2 equals 12, and I want 10 to be the subject. 6 plus 7 equals 13. Let's make 7 the subject. Let's do something different. 25 minus 10 equals 25 minus 10 is 15, so 5 plus 10. And let's make 5 the subject. Just trying things out. And I want to try to see if you can do one involving multiplication. So 6 times 3 equals 18, and let's make 3 the subject. Let's do a divide one. 20 divided by 4 equals 5. Let's make 4 the subject. See if you can do these ones. They're a bit more challenging. So keep in mind, I don't actually want you to solve any equations. I just want you to move the terms around the equal sign so you get comfortable with doing that. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll come back to the video. Okay, so now that you've had a few minutes, let's do the first one here. 10 plus 2 is 12. We want to make 10 the subject, so 10 equals 12 minus 2. Right, all we've done is we moved the 2 to the other side, so that became the let me do the answers in another color. So that became minus 2. We want to move the 6 to the other side, so that becomes this is a positive 6, so when we move it to the other side it becomes minus 6. So 7 equals 13 minus 6. We want to make the 5 the subject, so this becomes 25 minus 10, and because we want to make this 5 the subject, we're going to move the 10 to the other side, which becomes another minus 10 equals 5. Okay, and here we have 3 equals 18 divided by 6, and here we have 4 equals 20 divided by 5. Okay, so the multiply and the dividing ones are slightly more complicated, but it's the same principle, right? We have 6 times 3. So if we have times 6 and we move it to the other side, it becomes divided by 6. Right, and 20 divided by 4 is 5, therefore 20 divided by 5 must equal 4. So this one is a bit more advanced, but later on you will understand that as we go further into algebra. Okay, so a few more multiplication ones. So if we have something like 2 by 7 is 14, we can make 2 the subject, so 2 equals 14 divided by 7. Alright, because we've moved the 7 to the other side, so it becomes divided by 7. Alright, and if we have 20 divided by 5 equals 4, and we want to make 20 the subject, so we can rewrite it as 20 equals 4 times 5, right? Because we have divided by 4, and if you move the divide to the other side, it becomes times. Okay, so we can probably move on to the algebra straight away. Okay, so make x the subject and then solve for x. Okay, so question 1, x plus 3 equals 7. Okay, so what I want you to do is to make x the subject first by writing x equals 7 minus 3, and then 7 minus 3 equals 4. X equals 4. So that's what I want you to write as the answers. Don't skip any steps. Okay, don't just write the answer, because that's not the point. We want you to show the working out. Okay, so x minus 20 equals 30. X times 2 equals 12. x divided by 5 equals 4, and let's do 30 divided by x equals 5. Okay, so do them and then come back to see the answer. Pause the video. Okay, so we're going to make x the subject by moving the 20 to the other side, so it becomes 30 plus 20, which is 50. Moving the times 2 to the other side, so 12 divided by 2 is 6. Moving the divided by 5 to the other side, so it's 4 times 5, which is 20. And x equals 30 divided by 5, which is 6. Okay, so this concludes our first lesson in algebra. And basically you have learned a little bit about how to manipulate the terms in an equation. And if you're interested, come back to the next video and hopefully we'll learn some more algebra. Thank you for watching. See you next time.